Sara Windsor's finger hovered over the send button for exactly 3 seconds before she clicked it, unaware that she had just attached the wrong document to the most important email of her life. She leaned back in her creaky desk chair, the one she kept meaning to replace, but never did because rent in the city ate most of her paycheck from the bakery. The email had gone to Sterling House Publishing, the most prestigious publishing house in North America, owned by billionaire Owen Sinclair. She had been working on her romance novel for 2 years, polishing every sentence until it gleamed. What she didn't realize was that instead of attaching the Heart's Journey final draft, she had sent Confessions of a Failed Writer a diary. The diary was raw, unfiltered, and deeply personal. It contained her thoughts about love, her fears about never finding it, her observations about the customers at the bakery where she worked, and her honest feelings about the publishing industry. It was never meant for anyone's eyes but her own. Sara grabbed her phone and texted her best friend Maya. "Just sent my manuscript to Sterling House. Fingers crossed." Maya responded immediately with a string of celebration emojis, "And you're going to make IT." That night, Sara slept better than she had in weeks. She dreamed of book signings and bestseller lists, of finally being able to quit her job at the bakery and write full-time. She was 26 years old, and this felt like her last real shot at making her dream come true. 3 days later, her phone rang at 7 in the morning. She was still in bed, her alarm not set to go off for another hour. The number was unlisted and she almost didn't answer. "Hello?" Her voice was thick with sleep. "Is this Sara Windsor?" The voice on the other end was deep, masculine, and carried an authority that made her sit up straight even though he couldn't see her. "Yes, this is she. This is Owen Sinclair, from Sterling House Publishing." Sara's heart stopped. Owen Sinclair himself was calling her. Not an assistant, not a junior editor. The billionaire who owned the entire company. "Mr. Sinclair, I wanted to call you personally because what you sent me was the best thing I've read in 5 years. His voice had a warmth to it that she hadn't expected. "Your honesty, your vulnerability, the way you see the world, it's extraordinary." Sara's mind raced. Best thing he'd read. Her romance novel was good, but best in 5 years seemed excessive. Unless, "Mr. Sinclair, which document did you read?" There was a pause. She could hear papers shuffling. "Confessions of a Failed Writer." It's not really a confession, though, is it? It's a love letter to life, to possibility, to the messy, beautiful reality of chasing dreams. Oh God. Oh no. He had read her diary. "Mr. Sinclair, there's been a terrible mistake. That wasn't supposed to be sent to you. That was a personal document. My actual novel." "Stop," he said, and his tone was gentle but firm. "Don't apologize for authenticity. Do you know how many polished, soulless manuscripts cross my desk every single day? Hundreds. They're technically perfect and emotionally empty. What you wrote made me feel something. It made me laugh. It made me think. There's a part where you describe watching an elderly couple at your bakery, how they still held hands after 50 years together. And you wrote that love like that was the real magic in the world. That paragraph alone was worth more than most of the novels I've published this year." Sara felt tears prickling at her eyes. This couldn't be happening. It was too surreal. "But it's just my thoughts. It's not a story. It's not structured. It's real. And I want to publish it. With your permission, of course. I'd like to meet with you to discuss the details." "Are you available today?" "Today, I have to work at the bakery this afternoon." "What time?" 2 to 10. "Can you come to my office at 10 tomorrow morning?" Sara's mouth was dry. Yes, I can do that." "Good. I'll have my assistant send you the address." "And Sara, bring your romance novel too. I'd like to read everything you write." After he hung up, Sara sat in stunned silence for a full 5 minutes. Then she screamed into her pillow, equal parts excited and mortified. The next morning, she stood outside Sterling House Publishing, a gleaming 40-story building in downtown Manhattan. She had chosen her outfit carefully, a navy blue dress that was professional but not trying too hard, paired with simple black heels. Her dark hair was pulled back in a low bun, and she had applied just enough makeup to look polished. The lobby was all marble and glass, with a massive chandelier hanging from the vaulted ceiling. She gave her name to the receptionist, who smiled and directed her to the private elevator that went directly to the top floor. When the doors opened, she stepped into a space that was somehow both luxurious and inviting. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city. Bookshelves lined the walls, filled with titles that Sterling House had published over its 50-year history. A woman in her 40s approached, extending her hand. "Sara Windsor. I'm Patricia, Mr. Sinclair's executive assistant. He's just finishing up a call. Can I get you anything?" "Coffee, tea, water?" "Water would be great, thank you." Patricia returned with a glass of sparkling water just as a door opened at the far end of the room. Owen Sinclair emerged, and Sarah's breath caught. She had seen his picture online, of course. Forbes did features on him regularly. But photographs didn't capture the physical presence of the man. He was tall, easily 6'3", with broad shoulders that filled out his charcoal suit perfectly. His dark hair had just a touch of gray at the temples, and his eyes were a striking green. He looked to be in his early 30s, young for someone who had built such an empire, but there was a maturity in his bearing that suggested he'd earned every bit of his success. "Sara." He crossed the room in long strides and shook her hand. His grip was firm and warm. "Thank you for coming. Please, come into my office." His office was even more impressive than the reception area. A massive desk dominated one side of the room, but he gestured to a more casual seating area with comfortable leather chairs arranged around a coffee table. "I've been thinking about your work nonstop since I read it," he said, settling into the chair across from her. "I want to be completely transparent with you about what I'm proposing. I think your diary or journal, or whatever you want to call it, could be adapted into a narrative memoir. We'd work with you to shape it to find the through line, but we'd keep the raw honesty that makes it special. Have you ever considered writing something like that?" Sara shook her head. "I've always wanted to write fiction. Romance novels, specifically. That's what I've been working toward. And I absolutely want to read your novel. But Sara, there's something in your nonfiction writing that's incredibly rare. You have the ability to take everyday moments and find profound meaning in them. That's a gift." She felt herself warming to the idea despite her initial resistance. "What would the timeline look like?" "We'd want to publish within a year. I'd assign you one of our best editors, someone who could help you develop the manuscript while keeping your voice intact. We'd support you financially during the writing process so you could cut back your hours at the bakery, or quit if you wanted to focus on this full time." "Financial support?" Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. Owen named a figure that made her dizzy. It was more money than she made in 2 years at the bakery. "That's just the advance," he continued. "We'd negotiate royalties, and if the book performs the way I think it will, you'd earn considerably more. I believe in this project, Sara. I believe in you." She looked at him carefully, trying to read his intentions. He was a billionaire, one of the most powerful men in publishing. Why was he personally invested in this? "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Anything. Why are you handling this yourself? Don't you have people who usually do this?" Owen leaned back in his chair, and for the first time she saw something vulnerable in his expression. "Honestly, I've been running this company for 8 years, and somewhere along the way I lost touch with why I got into this business in the first place. I loved books. I loved stories. I loved finding new voices and helping them reach readers. But when you're dealing with profit margins and board meetings and market analysis, that love gets buried. Reading your work reminded me what it feels like to be moved by words on a page. I wanted to be involved because you made me remember why I do this. Sara felt something shift in her chest. This wasn't just a business deal to him, it was personal. Okay, she said. Let's do it. Owen's face broke into a genuine smile, and she noticed that he had a small dimple in his left cheek. Excellent. Patricia will draw up the contracts. In the meantime, I'd love to take you to lunch. We can discuss your vision for the book, and you can tell me about this romance novel you've been working on. Lunch turned into a 3-hour conversation at a quiet French restaurant where the staff treated Owen like royalty, but he remained completely down to earth. Sara told him about her novel, a story about two chefs who competed on a reality cooking show and fell in love despite being rivals. He listened intently, asking thoughtful questions, and by the time dessert arrived, she felt like she'd known him for years instead of hours. You have a real talent for dialogue, he said. The way you describe their banter, I can hear their voices. I'd love to read the full manuscript. Really. Even though it's not as raw and real as the diary, it's a different kind of real. You're creating characters and giving them authentic emotions. That takes skill. He paused, setting down his fork. Can I be honest with you about something? Of course. I don't usually do this. Take authors to lunch, spend hours talking about their work. I have a team for that. But there's something about you, Sara. Your passion for writing, the way you see the world, it's infectious. I find myself wanting to know more. Sara felt heat rise to her cheeks. Was he saying what she thought he was saying? I find you interesting too, she admitted. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone more corporate, more distant. You're actually really easy to talk to, Owen laughed, and the sound was rich and genuine. My board of directors would be shocked to hear you say that. They think I'm too hands-off, too focused on the creative side instead of the business side. But you've built an incredibly successful company. Because I trust good people to handle what they're good at. I'm good at recognizing talent and taking risks on books that matter. The numbers sighed. I have CFOs for that. He glanced at his watch and grimaced. I have a meeting in 20 minutes that I can't miss. But Sara, I'd like to see you again. Outside of work talk. Would you have dinner with me this weekend? Her heart hammered against her ribs. Like a date, exactly like a date. If you're interested. She should probably say no. He was her publisher. This was complicated. But when she looked into those green eyes, all her rational objections melted away. I'm interested, she said. That Saturday, Owen picked her up at her apartment in a car that probably cost more than she'd earn in a decade. He wore dark jeans and a black sweater, dressed down but still impossibly handsome. He opened her door, helped her in, and she caught a whiff of his cologne, something woody and expensive. Where are we going? She asked. It's a surprise. Do you trust me? She should have been nervous, but somehow she did trust him. Yes. They drove out of the city, talking easily about everything and nothing. Owen told her about growing up in Boston, the son of a literature professor and a librarian. He had always been surrounded by books, and publishing had felt like destiny. My parents thought I'd become an academic, he said. They were surprised when I went into business instead. But I wanted to be on the creation side, not just studying what already existed. Do they live in Boston still? A shadow crossed his face. They passed away 6 years ago. Car accident. It was sudden. Owen, I'm so sorry. Thank you. It's part of why I threw myself so completely into the company. Work became a way to cope, and somewhere in there, it stopped being about the books and became just about the success. until I read your diary and remembered what actually matters." She reached over and squeezed his hand. He glanced at her with surprise and gratitude, then laced his fingers through hers. They arrived at a small coastal town just as the sun was beginning to set. Owen parked near a beach and they walked along the shore, shoes in hand, waves lapping at their feet. "I used to come here as a kid," he said. "Family vacations. It was one of the few places where my parents would completely disconnect from their work and just be present. I haven't been back in years." "Why did you bring me here?" He stopped walking and turned to face her. The ocean breeze caught her hair, and he reached up to tuck a strand behind her ear. The gesture was so tender it made her heart ache. "Because you make me want to reconnect with the things I've lost. The parts of myself I buried under business deals and bottom lines. When I'm with you, I feel like myself again. The self I used to be before everything became so complicated." Sara stood on her tiptoes and kissed him. It was soft and sweet, and when they pulled apart, both of them were smiling. They had dinner at a tiny seafood shack where the lobster rolls were enormous, and the tables were picnic benches. Owen told her stories about his childhood, and she told him about growing up in a small town in Ohio, about her parents who ran a hardware store and supported her dreams even though they didn't quite understand them. "They think writing is more of a hobby than a career," she said. "They're proud of me, but I can tell they worry. They won't worry anymore once your book is published. You're going to be incredible, Sara. I can feel it." The drive back to the city felt too short. When Owen walked her to her apartment door, she didn't want the night to end. "Come in for coffee," she offered. He hesitated, and she could see the war happening behind his eyes. "I want to. God, I really want to, but I also want to do this right. Take our time. I don't want you to ever feel like our professional relationship complicates things." "Owen, I'm a grown woman. I can separate business from personal." "I know you can. But I need to know that I can too. You're important to me, Sara, more important than any book deal. I need to be sure I'm not rushing this because I'm caught up in the excitement of finding you." She appreciated his honesty even as her body protested the distance. "Okay, we'll take it slow." He kissed her goodnight, a lingering kiss that promised more, and then he was gone. Over the next few months, Sara's life transformed. She quit her job at the bakery and dedicated herself to working on the memoir with her editor, a sharp but kind woman named Jennifer, who helped her shape the diary entries into a cohesive narrative. The through line they discovered was Sara's journey from cynicism about love to hope, traced through her observations of the relationships around her. Owen was involved every step of the way, reading each revised section and offering feedback that was always insightful and encouraging. They continued dating, carefully keeping their professional and personal relationships balanced. He took her to gallery openings and quiet dinners, to Broadway shows and walks through Central Park. Every date deepened her feelings for him. One evening, about 4 months after they met, Owen invited her to his penthouse apartment. She had never been to his place, and stepping inside was like entering a different world. The space was massive, but somehow still felt warm and lived in. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves dominated every wall, filled with thousands of volumes. "This is incredible," she breathed, running her fingers along the spines. She recognized first editions, rare classics, and contemporary novels all mixed together. "This is the real me," Owen said. "The business side, the money, that all came later. But books have always been my home." He had cooked dinner for her, an impressive pasta dish that he served with wine older than she was. They ate on his balcony overlooking the city, and as the lights twinkled below them, Sara felt a sense of contentment she'd never experienced before. "I'm falling in love with you," she said, the words escaping before she could second-guess them. Owen set down his wine glass and reached across the table to take her hand. I fell in love with you the moment I read that paragraph about the elderly couple holding hands. I fell in love with the person who could see that much beauty in a simple moment. Everything since then has just been falling deeper. She moved around the table and settled into his lap. His arms wrapped around her, strong and secure, and when they kissed, it felt like coming home. They made love that night with a tenderness that brought tears to Sarah's eyes. Owen touched her like she was precious, like every kiss mattered, and afterward, as they lay tangled in his sheets, she knew with absolute certainty that this was the man she wanted to spend her life with. "Stay," he whispered against her hair. "Not just tonight. Stay. I have a lease on my apartment. Break it. Move in here. I know it's fast, but Sarah, I don't want to spend another night without you." She should have been scared by the speed of it all, but she wasn't. "Okay," she said. "Yes." The next morning, Owen woke her with coffee and croissants and a stack of papers. "What's this?" she asked, sitting up in bed. "The final cover design for your book. I wanted you to be the first to see it." She took the papers with trembling hands. The cover was stunning, a simple but elegant design with her title in bold letters, "Confessions of a Modern Dreamer." Below it, in smaller text, "A memoir by Sara Windsor." "It's perfect," she whispered. "The marketing team is incredibly excited. Early advance reviews are exceptional. Sarah, I think you're going to be a bestseller." She launched herself at him, kissing him hard, croissants forgotten. This was everything she'd ever wanted, and it was happening because she'd made a stupid mistake and sent the wrong file. Life was strange and wonderful and perfect. Moving in with Owen was surprisingly easy. He cleared out half his closet without being asked, and he was delighted when she filled the empty bookshelves with her own collection. They fell into a comfortable rhythm. He'd go to the office while she wrote, working now on her romance novel with renewed energy and confidence. They'd have dinner together every night, either cooking at home or trying new restaurants. Weekends were for lazy mornings in bed and long walks through the city. 2 months before her book was set to launch, Owen took her back to the beach where they'd had their first date. The weather was cooler now, late October bringing a chill to the air. They walked along the shore, bundled in jackets, and Sarah felt perfectly content. Owen stopped at the same spot where they'd first kissed. "Sara Windsor, I need to ask you something." Her heart began to race as he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "I know we haven't been together that long by conventional standards, but I've learned that time isn't what matters. What matters is how you feel and whether you can imagine a future without the other person. I can't imagine mine without you. You've brought light back into my life. You've reminded me what it means to be passionate about something beyond success. You make me want to be better, to live more fully, to appreciate the small moments." He opened the box, revealing a stunning diamond ring. "Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down her face. "Yes, absolutely yes." He slid the ring onto her finger and it fit perfectly. They kissed as the waves crashed around them, and Sarah thought about the elderly couple she'd written about in her diary, the ones who still held hands after 50 years. She and Owen were just beginning their story, but she knew with absolute certainty that they'd still be holding hands 5 decades from now. The book launch was a massive event held at a historic library in Manhattan. The room was packed with media, bloggers, and readers who had been drawn in by the advance buzz. Sarah was terrified, dressed in a simple black dress that Owen had helped her pick out, her engagement ring catching the light every time she moved her hand. Owen stood at the back of the room, watching with undisguised pride as she took the podium. "Thank you all for coming," Sarah began, her voice stronger than she felt. "This book began as a mistake. I sent the wrong file to Sterling House Publishing. I meant to send my carefully polished novel, and instead, I sent my messy, unfiltered diary. It was mortifying. But Owen Sinclair, the owner of Sterling House, called me and said it was the best thing he'd read in years. That phone call changed my life in more ways than one. She looked directly at Owen, and he gave her an encouraging nod. This memoir is about learning to see the extraordinary in the ordinary. It's about observing love and loss and hope in everyday moments. But more than that, it's about being brave enough to be vulnerable, to share your real self with the world. Owen saw value in my vulnerability, and that gave me the courage to keep writing from a place of truth. I hope when you read this book, you'll find moments that resonate with your own life, your own observations, your own journey. The applause was thunderous. The reading that followed was received with laughter and a few sniffles, and during the signing afterward, person after person told Sara how much her words had moved them. Owen stayed until the last book was signed and the last guest had left. Then he wrapped her in his arms and whispered, "I'm so proud of you." "None of this would have happened without you," she said. "That's not true. You're the one with the talent. I just recognized it." The book debuted at number 3 on the New York Times bestseller list. By week 2, it had climbed to number 1. Sara did interviews and went on a book tour, and through it all, Owen was her constant support. He'd rearranged his schedule to travel with her when he could, and when he couldn't, he'd call her every night to hear about her day. 6 months after the book launched, Sara finished her romance novel. Owen read it in one sitting and declared it brilliant. Sterling House published it 8 months later, and while it didn't have the same cultural impact as her memoir, it sold well and cemented her reputation as a versatile writer. They got married on a sunny day in June, exactly 1 year after their engagement. The ceremony was at the same beach where Owen had proposed, intimate and beautiful with just their closest friends and family. Sara's parents were there, finally understanding that their daughter's dreams had been worth chasing. Owen's colleagues from Sterling House attended, along with Jennifer, her editor, who had become a good friend. Sara wore a simple white dress and carried wildflowers. Owen couldn't stop smiling the entire day. When they exchanged vows, speaking words they'd written themselves about love and partnership and building a life together, there wasn't a dry eye in the small crowd. "I promise to always see you," Sara said, "the way you saw value in my messy diary. To recognize the extraordinary person you are, every single day." "I promise to be your biggest fan," Owen replied, "and to remind you of your strength whenever you doubt yourself. You made me remember how to live fully, and I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you know how loved you are." They honeymooned in Italy, spending 2 weeks eating incredible food and touring ancient libraries, and making love in beautiful hotels. Owen had stepped back from day-to-day operations at Sterling House, promoting his capable COO to president and keeping himself in a more advisory role. He wanted time for his marriage, time to rediscover the joy of reading without the pressure of profitability. Sara continued writing, producing a book every year or so. Some were memoirs, some were novels. All of them carried her signature blend of emotional honesty and keen observation. Owen remained her first reader, offering feedback and encouragement, never once leveraging his professional position to influence her creative choices. 3 years into their marriage, Sara discovered she was pregnant. She told Owen over dinner at home, placing the positive test on the table between them. He stared at it for a long moment, then looked up at her with tears in his eyes. "We're having a baby. We're having a baby." He came around the table and pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was the most precious thing in the world. "I can't believe this. Sara, you've given me everything. You brought me back to life, and now we're creating a new life together." Their daughter was born on a snowy February morning. They named her Eleanor, after Owen's mother, and she had her father's green eyes and her mother's dark hair. Owen was an attentive, loving father, the kind who did middle-of-the-night feedings without complaint and read picture books with theatrical voices that made Eleanor giggle. Sara took a year off from writing to focus on motherhood, but she found herself jotting down observations about this new phase of life. The exhaustion, the overwhelming love, the way everything changed, and yet somehow the core of who you were remained the same. She knew eventually those notes would become another book. When Eleanor was 2, they had a son, Michael. Their penthouse, once so quiet and orderly, became filled with toys and laughter and the chaos of family life. Owen never complained about the mess. If anything, he seemed to thrive in it. One evening, after getting both kids to bed, Owen and Sara collapsed on the couch together. She was curled against his side, his arm around her shoulders, both of them exhausted and happy. "You ever think about that day you accidentally sent me your diary?" Owen asked. "All the time." "Best mistake I ever made." "It wasn't a mistake," he said softly. "It was fate." Sara looked up at him and smiled. "You really believe that?" "I believe that some things are meant to happen. I believe that I was meant to read your words, and you were meant to walk into my life and turn everything upside down in the best possible way. I believe we were meant to find each other." She kissed him, soft and sweet, a kiss that still held all the passion of their early days but was now deepened by years of partnership and love. "I love you," she said. "I love you too. Always." Years passed in a blur of school plays and book launches, of family vacations and quiet evenings at home. Sara became an established author with a loyal readership. Owen eventually sold Sterling House to a larger publisher, but negotiated a deal that protected the company's artistic integrity and kept its staff employed. He used the proceeds to start a foundation that provided grants to aspiring writers from underprivileged backgrounds. Eleanor grew up to love literature like her parents, though she was more interested in poetry than prose. Michael surprised everyone by developing a passion for marine biology, spending his summers studying ocean ecosystems. Owen and Sara supported both their children's dreams with the same enthusiasm they'd once brought to their own ambitions. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Owen took Sara back to the beach. It had become their tradition, returning to the place where everything had begun. The coastline had changed a bit over the years, but the essential beauty remained. They walked hand in hand along the shore, their hair now showing threads of gray, their faces marked by the years, but still showing the love that had brought them together. "Do you remember what you wrote in your diary?" Owen asked. "The part about the elderly couple at the bakery?" "Of course. I wrote that watching them hold hands after 50 years together proved that real magic existed in the world." "We're not at 50 years yet," he said, "but I feel the magic every single day. When I wake up next to you, when I watch you with our kids, when I see your face light up over a perfectly crafted sentence. You're still the best thing I ever read, Sara. Every day with you is like discovering a new chapter in the most beautiful story ever written." She stopped walking and turned to face him, cupping his face in her hands. "You gave me everything, Owen. A career, a family, a love that sustained me through everything life has thrown at us. I was so lost before I met you, working at that bakery and wondering if my dreams would ever come true. And then I sent the wrong file and you called and everything changed." "We changed each other," he said. "That's what love does. It transforms us into better versions of ourselves." They kissed as the sun set over the ocean, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and gold. Waves crashed around them, constant and eternal, like the love they shared. Later that evening, back in the city, their children and friends gathered for an anniversary dinner. Eleanor, now 17 and preparing for college, gave a toast that brought tears to everyone's eyes. "My parents have shown me what real love looks like," she said, raising her glass. "It's not just the grand gestures, though Dad has always been good at those. It's the daily choice to show up for each other. It's the way Mom still brings Dad coffee in bed every Sunday morning, and the way Dad still looks at Mom like she's the most fascinating person in the world. It's the teamwork, the laughter, the way they've built a life together that includes us kids but doesn't revolve entirely around us. They've taught me that love is both a feeling and an action, and that the best relationships are the ones where you never stop choosing each other." Owen squeezed Sarah's hand under the table, and she blinked back tears. This was their legacy, not just the books they'd published or the foundation they'd created, but the love they'd modeled for their children and everyone around them. Michael, 15 and always more reserved than his sister, added his own toast. "You guys are actually pretty cool for old people. And you still hold hands in public, which is kind of gross, but also kind of awesome." The table erupted in laughter, and the evening continued with good food and better company. That night, alone again in their bedroom, Sara sat at her desk working on her latest manuscript while Owen read in bed. It was their familiar routine, one they'd developed years ago and never tired of. "What are you working on?" Owen asked, looking up from his book. "A romance novel about a woman who sends the wrong email to a billionaire publisher and ends up falling in love with him." Owen laughed. "Sounds familiar. Think anyone will believe it." "I'm changing enough details to make it fiction. But yeah, some readers might see the parallels." "Are you giving it a happy ending?" Sara turned in her chair to look at him, this man who had changed her entire world with one phone call. "The happiest ending possible. Because that's what we deserve. That's what everyone deserves who's brave enough to be vulnerable and take risks." "Come here," Owen said, setting his book aside and holding out his hand. She crossed the room and climbed into bed beside him. He pulled her close, and she rested her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "I would do it all again," Owen said quietly. "Every single moment, every choice that led me to you. Even the hard parts, even the days when the company was struggling or we fought about something stupid. All of it was worth it to end up here with you, with our family, with this life we've built." "Me too," Sara whispered. "I'd send that wrong file 1,000 times if it meant finding you." They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other's arms, the city lights twinkling beyond their windows. Outside, life continued its relentless pace, but inside their home, inside their love, there was peace and contentment and the deep satisfaction of a story well told. Sara's latest book, the romance novel inspired by their own story, was published a year later. It became her biggest commercial success yet, resonating with readers who loved the mix of professional tension and genuine connection between the characters. In interviews, Sara was always careful to note that while inspired by real events, the book was fiction, but people who knew her and Owen could see the truth woven throughout. The book's success led to a film option, and 3 years later, Sara and Owen attended the premiere in Los Angeles. Their kids, now in college and high school, came with them, dressed in formal wear and trying to act cool about the whole thing even though Sara could see the excitement in their eyes. The movie was good, better than Sara had dared to hope. The actors captured the essence of the characters, and the screenplay had preserved the emotional core of the story. When the credits rolled and the audience applauded, Owen leaned over and whispered, "Still not as good as the real thing." At the after-party, a young woman approached Sara nervously. "Miss Windsor, I just wanted to tell you that your books changed my life. I was working a dead-end job and had given up on my dream of being a writer. But reading about your journey, how you kept working at the bakery while writing, how you almost gave up but kept going, it inspired me to try again. I just got my first book deal last month." Sara felt her throat tighten with emotion. "That's wonderful. Congratulations. What's your book about?" The young woman blushed. "It's about a pastry chef who falls in love with her rival at a baking competition." "I know it sounds silly." "It doesn't sound silly at all," Sara interrupted. "It sounds lovely. I hope you'll send me a copy when it's published. I'd love to read it." After the woman walked away, Owen pulled Sara aside. "You do realize you've become exactly what you needed when you were starting out, right? You're the inspiration for the next generation of writers." "We did that together," Sara corrected. "You took a chance on me, on that messy diary. You showed me that vulnerability was strength, not weakness." "I'm just paying that forward." The years continued to unfold with grace and love. Eleanor graduated from college and became a poet, publishing collections that were critically acclaimed and deeply personal. Michael completed his doctorate in marine biology and took a position researching coral reef restoration in Australia. Sara and Owen visited both their children regularly, proud of the independent, passionate adults they'd become. Owen's foundation flourished, having helped launch the careers of dozens of writers who might not have otherwise had opportunities. He stayed involved with the literary world through board positions and mentorship, but never returned to the day-to-day stress of running a publishing house. He'd found something more valuable than success. He'd found balance. Sara continued writing, though she slowed her pace as she got older. Quality over quantity, she always said. Each book was carefully crafted, each story told with intention and heart. Her readers remained loyal, growing with her over the decades, and new readers continued to discover her backlist. On their 30th anniversary, their children organized a surprise party. Friends from every phase of Owen and Sara's life attended. Jennifer, Sara's original editor, now retired but still sharp as ever. Patricia, Owen's former assistant who had become a close family friend. Authors Sara had mentored over the years. Colleagues from Owen's days at Sterling House. Even Maya, Sara's best friend from before everything changed, who had been there for that first excited text message and every milestone since. As Sara looked around the room at all these people who had been part of their journey, she felt overwhelmed with gratitude. Her life had turned out better than anything she could have written in fiction. Owen stood to give a speech, and the room quieted. 30 years ago, I received an email that changed my life. Sara Windsor sent me what she thought was a carefully polished manuscript, but instead, she sent me her diary. Her fears, her hopes, her observations about the world. It was raw and real and absolutely beautiful. I called her the next morning and told her it was the best thing I'd read in years. What I didn't tell her was that I'd stayed up all night reading it multiple times, completely captivated by this woman I'd never met. He looked at Sara, and his eyes were bright with emotion. "I fell in love with your words before I fell in love with you. But once I met you, once I knew the person behind those words, I was done for. You've been my partner, my best friend, my greatest adventure. You made me a better man, a better father, a better human being. Every day with you has been a gift I never take for granted." Sara stood and crossed to him, not caring that everyone was watching, not caring about anything except being close to the man who had chosen her all those years ago. "I love you," she said simply. "I love you too," he replied. "Always." Their kiss was met with applause and cheers, and the party continued into the early morning hours with dancing and laughter and storytelling. As they drove home in the pre-dawn light, Sara rested her head on Owen's shoulder in the back of the car. "Tired?" he asked. "Happy," she corrected. "So incredibly happy." "Me too." Years later, when they were both in their 70s, Sara published one final memoir. It was a reflection on a life well lived, on love and family and the unexpected paths that led to joy. The book was dedicated simply to Owen, who saw me before we met and loved me anyway. Owen read it sitting in their favorite spot on the balcony, and when he finished, he had tears streaming down his face. "It's perfect," he told her, "but you left out the best part." "What's that?" "That you saved me as much as I saved you. That we found each other at exactly the right moment, when we both needed to be reminded what really matters." Sara moved to sit beside him, and he wrapped an arm around her shoulders. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the city below them, thinking about all the moments that had led them here. Their grandchildren visited often, bringing noise and chaos and reminding them that life continued in beautiful, unexpected ways. Eleanor had two daughters who loved books just like their grandmother. Michael had a son who collected shells and dreamed of the ocean. On what would be their final anniversary together, Owen fell ill suddenly. The doctors said it was his heart, that he'd lived a good long life, but his time was limited. Sara refused to leave his hospital room, holding his hand day and night, talking to him about everything and nothing. "I'm not ready," she told him through tears. "I need more time with you." "We've had 50 years, Owen said, his voice weak but steady. 50 years of incredible, beautiful life together. That's more than most people ever get." "It's still not enough." "No," he agreed. "It never would have been enough, but Sara, what a story we had, what a love." "The best story," she whispered. "Better than anything I ever wrote." Owen squeezed her hand. "Promise me you'll keep writing, keep telling stories, keep finding the extraordinary in the ordinary. That's your gift to the world." "I promise." He smiled, that same smile that had captivated her 5 decades earlier. "That's my girl." Eleanor and Michael arrived with their families, and Owen's final hours were surrounded by the people he loved most. Sara never let go of his hand, keeping her promise from all those years ago to always hold on. When he passed, it was peaceful. Sara felt the moment he left, felt a piece of her own heart go with him. But she also felt gratitude for every moment they'd shared, every kiss, every conversation, every ordinary day that had been made extraordinary by love. The memorial service was held at the same library where Sara had launched her first book. Hundreds of people attended, all of them touched by Owen's life and generosity. Sara spoke about their love story, about how a wrong email had led to everything right in her life. She spoke about his kindness, his vision, his unwavering support of not just her but countless other writers over the years. "Owen believed in the power of words," she said. "He believed that stories could change lives, could open hearts, could make the world a little bit better. He lived that belief every single day. And he taught me that love, real love, is about seeing someone completely and choosing them anyway. He saw my mess, my fears, my imperfections, and he called them beautiful. That's the gift he gave me, and I'll carry it for the rest of my life." In the months after Owen's death, Sara struggled. The grief was overwhelming, a physical weight that made even simple tasks feel impossible. But she had promised him she'd keep writing, so she did. Every day she sat at her desk and put words on the page, even when they felt inadequate, even when she wanted to give up. She wrote about loss and love, about how they were intertwined, how you couldn't have one without risking the other. She wrote about memory, about how the people we love never truly leave us as long as we carry them in our hearts. She wrote about gratitude, about being thankful for what was rather than bitter about what was lost. The book was published a year after Owen's death. Sara dedicated it to him. To Owen Sinclair, who taught me what it means to love fully and live bravely. The story continues, my love, even though you're not here to rate it. The book resonated with readers who had experienced their own losses. Sara received thousands of letters from people who found comfort in her words, who felt less alone in their grief. She answered as many as she could, paying forward the kindness Owen had shown her all those years ago. Eleanor and Michael worried about their mother living alone in the penthouse, but Sara assured them she was okay. This home is filled with memories of your father, she told them. I feel closest to him here. I'm not ready to leave that behind. She lived for another decade, writing sporadically but never losing her gift for observation and emotion. She spent time with her grandchildren, telling them stories about their grandfather, making sure they knew what an extraordinary man he'd been. She traveled, visiting places she and Owen had always talked about but never made it to, feeling his presence with her in every new experience. On a crisp autumn day, Sara returned to the beach where Owen had proposed, where they had celebrated so many anniversaries. She was 83 years old, her hair completely white, her steps slower than they once were. But her mind was still sharp, her heart still full of love. She stood at the water's edge, letting the waves lap at her feet, and she thought about that first phone call. How terrified she'd been. How Owen's deep voice had said her words were the best he'd read. How one wrong click had led to a lifetime of right. I kept my promise, she said aloud, speaking to the wind and the waves and the memory of the man she'd loved. I kept writing. I kept finding the magic in the everyday. I lived fully, Owen, just like you taught me. She closed her eyes and felt the sun on her face. In her mind, she could hear his voice, feel his arms around her, sense his presence as real as it had ever been. When Sara passed away peacefully in her sleep several months later, she was surrounded by family, by books, by a life fully lived. Her final manuscript, discovered on her computer by Eleanor, was a love letter to Owen, 50 pages of memories and gratitude and eternal devotion. Eleanor and Michael published it posthumously as a small volume titled The Story of Us. It became a bestseller, introducing a new generation to their parents' love story, to the power of vulnerability and the magic of choosing each other every single day. At the end of the book, Sara had written, "They say everyone has one great love in their lifetime. I was lucky enough to find mine because I made a mistake, because I sent the wrong file to the right person, because Owen Sinclair saw past my carefully constructed facade and recognized the real me. And he loved that person, messy and imperfect and dreaming. We built a life together on that foundation of authenticity, and it was beautiful. If you take nothing else from our story, take this. Be brave enough to be real. Send the wrong draft. Show your mess. Love with your whole heart. You never know what magic might be waiting on the other side of vulnerability." The book ended with a photograph of Sara and Owen on their 50th anniversary, standing on the beach where it had all begun, holding hands and smiling at each other like newlyweds. The love in that image was palpable, proof that happily ever after wasn't just a fairy tale ending but something you could build with honesty, commitment, and the willingness to keep choosing each other every single day. And so the story of Sara Windsor and Owen Sinclair became more than just their own. It became inspiration, proof, and hope for everyone who read it. A reminder that sometimes the best things in life come from mistakes, that vulnerability is strength, and that real love, the kind that lasts, is always worth the risk.